Welcome to another live edition of In the Doghouse, a podcast by Justin Cotler, Dakota, Shackleton, and myself. This week, as just like last week, our special treat is to make fun of how Dakota beat me in the workouts and then give you guys some tips on how you can beat him in the coming days.
Yeah.
I was going to say 2-0, but I think now it's 3-0 actually.
It's true.
Double workout.
Yeah, I was trying to think what combinations could possibly come up next week that could give me a glimpse of hope that I could beat you. And I think it's over.
Not a lift. Not after today.
That's tough. Yeah.
1 RM deadlift.
That was probably the perfect lift for you to win because to me, it's most closely related to a push press, which we can talk more about. And that's not a strong lift for me. Pretty strong lift for you.
I think like every other lift across every lift across the board, I think you would have got me on clean and jerk. Shoulder to
maybe
overhead,
not front squat,
deadlift, maybe not front squat.
Hence, but hey, the reason Dakota had that call with the boss 2 days ago, just to make sure.
Love it. It was good.
How you guys feeling after that? How you feeling? Feel pretty good after that one?
Yeah, I feel better than I thought I was going to feel. I thought I was going to be hurting a little bit more. It did not destroy my back, did not destroy my midline. It was, a nice little cardio burn, and it had a little bit of like some ups and downs, but it definitely wasn't one where like the buzzer hit and I was falling on the floor like some of the workouts could have been. It was a good workout actually. I liked it.
How are you feeling, Keith?
Good. I probably feel about the same. Like I feel like if we were doing a training day right after it, that I could get back in and do normal training. I really actually don't feel like there's anything that I'd be like, oh, I can't do that today now. It was very much just kind of like a threshold cardio type of workout. It's long enough that you can't really like put the hammer down unless you're just the elite of the elite. And it's low skill enough. And the fact that there was no loading on it in the beginning, like if that were shuttle runs and dumbbell snatches, I'd be feeling like shit, I'm sure, just from the eccentric loading of that. But the fact that it was burpee pull-ups is like, it was just a grind. It very much was like, where's your fitness hat? How uncomfortable can you get towards the back half of this workout? It's a fun test, but definitely one that majority of people can train right through. Like you can hit that workout, take a little bit of time, move on. If you want to lift, squat after, cool. If you want to do some skill work after, cool. Like my pulling feels fine. My shoulders were a little tired during it, but they feel fine now. Even my legs, like if we needed to run after, I don't feel like that would have been that limited. So it's a nice one for a middle week of the Open.
Beautiful. Keith, why don't you take us through the workout, through the two parts, and then I think let's go over what we watched today with Roman and Pat. But first, let's go over it.
Yeah, so 2-part workout. First part is 15 minutes of burpee pull-ups and shuttle runs. And the way the format worked is you started with 5 burpee pull-ups, and then you went into 10 shuttle runs. 1 rep of shuttle runs, which we should all know at this point, is down and back. So 25 feet down, 25 feet back. That's 1 rep. Doing that 10 times. It's 20 touches if you prefer it that way, but it's
or 500 feet.
Yeah, but that's too big of a number. We don't have to.
I like that because it's 20 laps of 25 feet. It's 20 laps.
It's not 20 laps though. A lap would be a rounded track. It's 20 lengths.
Lengths.
There 20 lengths.
20 lengths.
Are people going to screw this up again?
Yes. There's no question they're going to screw it up again. Without question. It drives me insane. Sorry.
Every round after that, you add 5 burpee pull-ups. So it very quickly becomes a burpee heavy workout. The first few rounds, shuttle runs felt like a big chunk of it. But once you get to like the round of 15, to me, it turned into like a burpee workout where the shuttles were what I was begging to get back to so that I could relax for a little bit. And then part B was 5 minutes to establish a 1 rep max thruster. I actually really liked that it was immediately following rather than in the past where we've had like a 1 minute break period of some sort, because I think that forces people to think differently about how they approach the very end of the first part of the first workout, which is definitely something we can talk about, because they don't think like, oh, I've got a minute to chill. I go right into this 5 minute block. So you're starting to think about the second half when you're determining like how hard you want to hit the gas pedal at the end. And that's it.
So
piece of cake.
Yeah, piece of cake. So let's talk a little bit about what we watched today. We saw Pat and Roman get after it. Roman won both parts. The first part was pretty close. And Pat led for like the first 5 to 6 minutes, seemed to get out after it a little bit faster. And then Roman was able to catch him. And then they were pretty pretty much neck and neck until that last round of 30 burpee pull-ups. And then he took the lead. Couple things that I noticed throughout the workout, which I thought Roman executed very well on. First, I thought Roman had a little bit of advantage. There is no standard distance standard between your hands and the pull-up bar. Roman's a little bit taller and was a little bit closer to the pull-up bar, and you could see it on the pull-ups that when he jumped up, he had less distance to pull himself up, and over that many reps, I think it might have made a little bit of a difference. The other thing that I noticed was that Roman had little to no eccentric tension on his burpee, where Pat was lowering himself to the ground a lot more. I'm not saying that's what made the difference, but to me, that would obviously be a big tip that I would give to people is try not to slow down your burpee to the ground, which we always talk about in-house. But that was something, that at first glance that I noticed. We also noticed that Roman would run and he would touch with opposite hands on either length of the shuttle run, where Pat was staying with one hand the whole time, essentially just turning the same way, which again, I'm not a huge fan of. I'm a bigger fan of the way that Rome did it. And during the workout, Kiefer made the comment, be an athlete. I agree with that. To me, it's like, it's more athletic to be able to go, both sides, ambidextrous. And it's just, to me, it's more balance between your body and not having to push off the same leg, reach with the same hand. I'm more of a fan of creating more balance there. And then, so those are the big things that I saw on part A. On part B, Roman started at 135 and made that, just to kind of get the feel and groove the thruster a little bit, hit the 135, then jumped to 225, then 275, then 295, and missed 300. But I thought, it looked really solid. Pat started at 230. And honestly, that first one didn't look great. And then he struggled. That Hiller already made a post. Those next two thrusters could have easily been called no reps, the 250 and the 270. He missed 275. But I really liked Roman's strategy throughout. I thought he had a slightly better one on part A and part B, and executed better, and hence won both parts of the workout. But those are things, my initial thoughts when watching, and then obviously we can get into some deeper stuff. But what did you guys see out of that? Or were there any other thoughts or anything you want to add to those that we saw between Roman and Pat?
Yeah, that turning was like the first thing I noticed, even on the first round. And whoever was commentating, they mentioned it as well. Like, Pat was just going in a circle, kind of like similar to box jumps, like, just like crushing that left leg every single time. And, I definitely was trying to do the turn both ways. And then, we watched the average Joe or the average CrossFitter go before. And there was a huge difference in the burpee pull-up technique. I think, most of our people are going to be doing the jump in as much as you can and try and just finish up with a strict pull-up. But the group before, they were doing the jump, kipping, pull-up every single time. And that just depends where your pull-up ability or capacity is going to be at, for sure. But you can get your hands right up beneath those bar. You basically jump into the full pull-up. See the show events. And then like the loading was very interesting to me. Like, I would have thought I would have started out at 185, 205 and done a couple of smaller jumps, but once I saw him do that, I definitely took a little bit of that piece. I started at 155 and then made a few bigger jumps, squeezed in probably one more rep than I would have planned on initially. And that fast turnaround is tricky, but it's easier to do the fast turnaround and do 135 than stress about trying to hit a 225 bar on your first one.
And both you guys had the opportunity to change your shoes, right? You both changed your shoes?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I went into it thinking that like, I was going to need a throwaway weight at the beginning to feel it out, because in the past we've had these workouts like coming out of doing thrusters and pull-ups, and you're going into a clean complex or something and you feel totally trashed and the weight feels terrible. I actually felt the opposite on this. Like, I went in and my first weight was 185, which to me was like a kind of like a compromised throwaway. It wasn't like just 135, but it wasn't jumping right into a first attempt. And then I went to 215 from there, which was like what I thought would be a pretty easy first attempt that I knew I would be able to get past, but I needed that number. And I felt like I didn't need to do that. I was surprised getting to there at how fine my legs and my shoulders felt in terms of the thruster. It was just my heart rate being really high. And so having taken like a minute to a minute and 20 seconds, I think that I could have just gone right to that 215 bar rather than wasting the time at 185. But that might just be a personal thing, but I was like shocked at how little it was an issue for that. And, you know, when I ended up getting to my last lift was damn close to my heaviest lift that I would have done fresh anyway. And so I don't think that it was a huge factor there. And so I think time was a bigger friend of mine. And if I were to do it again, I would have started heavier to have a couple like more attempts or more time to rest at my heavier weights to treat it more like a strength piece.
So do you think if you had to do it over again, you'd start like 225-ish on the thruster?
I think so. My attempts were 185, 215. Well, I guess all of these plus 3 pounds because I had fractionals on, right? But 185, 215, 240, 250. So the last one. And then I even had time to take another rip at another weight and I ended up missing it. I wish that I had just started at the 215 and not wasted the 185. And I think that the difference for me would have been that instead of hitting that last weight that I missed after like 50 seconds of rest, I could have done that with like a minute and a half of rest because I would have had more time between those attempts. And so I think that there's probably a middle ground for everybody between like a first attempt weight that they feel good about and like a true throwaway weight. And if you can start a little bit higher and closer to that, you can close the gap. And I think most people should feel pretty confident that they can hit like that, 80 to 90% weight without much stress.
Yeah. And before the workout, we did pretty much just a quick build to almost a true max. And honestly, I almost felt better when we were a little bit more warmed up after the workout, getting into that second piece of thrusters. Like breathing was pretty heavy, but the fatigue really wasn't there immediately that the thruster wasn't able to be done. Like my jumps, I was 155, then I went 225, 45, 65. And then at the end had like one last chance at 275. And then, yeah, honestly, I think the same thing. If I were to go again, I'd probably start around the 200 range and then, like take out one of those jumps in between so that I could have had another shot at that heavier one. And it just would have given me, 15, 20 seconds between each lift instead of, basically that's an EMOM in 5 minutes with that last lift, like right before the buzzer happening.
I think we're so accustomed to thinking that your lifts are going to feel like dog shit coming out of a metcon before. And I don't think this was as bad as that. So I think that was just something we were surprised by. We were too conservative warming up. And I would encourage most people to be like a little bit more confident in the weights that you think you can do. Like I built to a max on the thruster beforehand because I haven't hit a heavy thruster in a really long time and I wanted to feel it. And I wanted to have a good idea for my athletes too, like what percent of your max is like realistic going into that. And I was damn close to what I feel like a max or a 93 to 95% would have been anyway. It was not a struggle of like a post metcon struggle. It was just a struggle because it was a hard weight for me. So I'll be a little more aggressive with people knowing that like 75 to 85%, that's going to be cake. And then we're going to try to like inch away those last couple of pounds. And I think that having more time for a couple heavier weights where you can take some of those smaller jumps instead of running out of time and maybe, if you're a male making a jump from like 245 to 270 because you're running out of time and then you miss that and you didn't have the time to make smaller jumps that you wish you had, I think that's going to make a big difference for people.
Dakota, how'd you feel jumping from 155 to 225? Do you feel like it was fine? It wasn't.
Yeah, that was fine. It felt good. I did the first one beltless, and so just always getting that extra little, snug on the belt made it feel cake. Okay, it was good.
Cool. Yeah. So, I think what we watched with the guys today, it was interesting. Roman started a little bit more deliberately than Pat. And then obviously was able to overtake him. I know it wasn't a big difference, but I think that that's important for people to recognize and to realize like, it's not about how fast you start. In fact, I think you can really screw yourself in the first, 3 to 4 minutes of the workout. Yeah. And Nick, one of our coaches, is saying he hit his one RM thruster,
right. Which is very consistent with I feel like people are going to be damn close to a 1RM or what they think is a 1RM. But I also think, I know I want to get back to talking about the first part of the workout, but the thruster is such a unique lift in that it's not anywhere near most people's 1RM clean. And it's not like doing a clean and jerk. So I don't think that you lose that much or that you smoke yourself that much by building something heavy before the workout. Like if you have no fucking idea what your 1 rep max thruster is, just casually build to a really heavy one before. You don't have to chalk up, stomp your feet, rip a bunch of caffeine and crank the music up to do it. But like build to something heavy before, and then take your time, warm up your shuttle runs and everything. And you're going to have a much better idea of where you're at if you don't know where it is. If you do know what your 1 rep max thruster is, I think you can pretty confidently hit 90% plus.
So I like that we have the video on now and we have an opportunity to be able to go through the movements themselves. I like when we're watching this here, you know, both guys, they're doing the little step up on the burpees, which I think is really smart because it gets you in a specific cadence and you can stay that way. And now we're watching in what we were talking about earlier, which is Pat, where he's turning each time the same way, touching with his right hand, as opposed to Roman, who comes down, touches right, goes back, touches left, gets a little spring off there. And I personally am a fan of the way that Roman is doing it. But obviously, you know, if some people are more comfortable turning one way, I just think it's creating a little bit more balance. You're not consistently reaching down and touching with the same hand or driving off the same leg. So that's the way that I would suggest it. And I also think on the pull-ups, if everybody noticed, and I had someone ask me this earlier because we saw the I forget their names who started, who went prior to Roman, who were members of CrossFit Bison. But they were jumping up and kipping every single rep. And obviously, if you can do what Roman and Pat are doing, where they're jumping, they're just jumping in and doing half pull-ups every single time. And that's the way you guys did it. That's the way to do it, guys. I mean, you want to set up literally 1 millimeter under the pull-up bar and be able to utilize that jump to be able to go in and jump halfway through the pull-up.
Yeah.
So those are the big things we're noticing here with these guys.
In addition to this, and this might be hard to see, it's something you can feel when you warm up, but the best you can, if you can stand up from your burpee with the intention of jumping before you worry about looking for the pull-up bar, I think it saves you a half a second, because it's really easy to like stand up, look straight up, find the bar, and then gather yourself for a jump. But if you can just stand up, jump, and then know that your hands are going to grab the bar as you're on the way up, know that it's close enough, I think it saves you a little bit of time. It makes it feel a little bit less obnoxious of like cranking your neck up every rep. And so that was my intention, or my goal, is like kind of just keeping my gaze forward, jumping, and then finding the pull-up bar as I'm pulling myself through that middle range. There's probably like that might be a little bit different for everybody in terms of like how confident you feel or how athletic you feel doing that. But I think that made a big difference in terms of just comfort on the back half of it.
If we talk about split times, I have Roman's split times, and he pretty much averaged throughout the entire workout just about 4 seconds per burpee pull-up. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh, look at that. We've already got it. So there you see it. Yep. You got 4.5 seconds, Pat at 4.7.
Did they steal this from Ava?
This is great. I love it. I know, right? And then I had it down as Roman fluctuated, but it's pretty dang close. But you look at those rounds of shuttle runs, and they're very, very close. 1 minute, 105, 108, 115, 121. So they did slow down a little bit. And then obviously they, hustled up a little bit on that round 6, but it's somewhere between 1 minute and 120 for the elites of the elite, right? And somewhere around 4 to 4.5 seconds on burpee pull-ups. And we saw Roman had enough gas to be able to speed up at the end and overtake Pat. And I think a lot of that is, I think people are going to have to be really, really diligent about pacing themselves on the first 2 rounds, which essentially I think you can get out really, really fast and then all of a sudden you hit a wall. But I think if you pace those first 2 rounds well, you're going to have enough gas to last the rest of the workout. And ultimately, I think that's the key is finding that steady pace. I always say like controlled aggression, but finding like a steady, semi-uncomfortable pace that you think is sustainable. And Kiefer, you talked about it earlier with Ava, which was kind of that 5K pace. But
Yeah,
go a little
it's
bit
even
more
like
into that.
yeah, just think of it in terms of time domain. This is right around where most people might be looking at like a 3K, or if you don't have one, think like what you feel like doing a 5K, maybe a little bit faster than that, depending on how fast you are through those things, right? Because there's no skill or loading that's going to limit you with muscular fatigue enough to make that the difference. This is very much just like, what is your heart rate? What is your capability through this whole thing? And you're trying to sustain from start to finish. So if you imagine you're running a 3 to 5K, you're not going to like sprint the beginning because you feel excited, slow down, and then suffer through that back half of it. You start at a pace that you're trying to hold through the whole thing. And I think that's exactly what you have to do here is you have to envision what you're going to feel like from minute 10 to 15. And that's the pace that you're trying to hold so that you can have as close to even split times as possible. I still think about last year with the 1 to 10 to 1 burpee and deadlift workout. It was Medeiros, and I don't remember who he went against. Maybe it was one of the Panchik brothers, I think. Justin, you'd probably remember.
I remember watching Laura and Emma more than I remember watching the boys. And I remember both of them went out so hot and they both just died.
Yeah. And somebody from the comment section might say it, but they showed at the end essentially the pacing and the split times, especially on the burpees for Justin versus the other person. And what you saw with Justin's was that it was very consistent throughout the whole thing. It was not exciting in the beginning. You almost look like you're just kind of like relaxed, maybe a little bit towards being bored. But the goal is that you're not getting that sort of exponential drop off as the back half of the workout goes on. And so I think a lot of people are going to overestimate how fit they feel in the first half, or they're going to think they have to race because it starts with such low sets. But I promise that sets of 15 burpee pull-ups, 20 burpee pull-ups, 25, getting to the set of 30 for a lot of people, your heart rate's going to jack up a lot more than you think. And so I think you have to pull back just a little bit and really try to think of like, okay, if I'm out running a 3 to 5K, what is my heart rate at? What's my feel as I go through that?
Yeah. Another thing as I'm thinking about it, and obviously just kind of making sure we're giving people tips along the way of how they can speed up their scores and things. Now, listen, there are times in the workout you're going to want to stop, but this is one of those workouts that's going to be consistent movement. If we saw again, we saw the members from the affiliate chalk up during the workout and kind of utilize that as a break. Please don't do that. If you're going to
get the chalk as far away as possible.
Yeah. Or if you have pockets, put chalk in your pocket. And as you're running for your shuttle run, you can do it on the way or put it somewhere that you can grab it and run with it and put, kind of drop it back down. But at the end of the day, these guys didn't chalk, they didn't use grips. There's no sense in that. And then if you notice, both of them have knee sleeves that are down, that are pushed down. Please don't wear your knee sleeves on the shuttle runs unless you're old and bone on bone like me. But in general, that you're going to blow up your quads and it's just not very comfortable. So have them there so you can, just pull them up when it's time for the thrusters, but you certainly do not need them during the shuttle runs. And these are just little things that you can do to pick up a little bit more time and make the workout a little bit more comfortable.
And as you're watching this, so you notice, I know, Justin, you made a comment before about how it seemed like Roman was a little closer to the bar. Their bars are actually at different heights. They both had the opportunity to adjust them to exactly the height they needed. Perfect. I think the difference we see in the two of them and how easy the pull-up piece is for Roman is that Pat's arms are just significantly longer. And so even after a little bit of a jump, Pat's got further to pull. Roman's head's already pretty close. So I think that's going to be just a thing across the board is like everybody's going to give a very similar amount of effort towards there. Everybody's going to have, an inch above their fingertips. But longer arms just means a little longer pull. But I think on the bright side, like I can speak for myself, I have longer arms. I'm terrible at volume pull-ups. My arms and lats and biceps did not blow up at all during this piece.
Also, look at Roman just dropping into his burpee, and look at Pat slowly lowering himself to the ground. Significant difference between the two, and I think that made a huge difference on this set of 30 that we're watching. So people can see that it's pretty significant. You see Roman literally just drop to the bottom, and you see Pat rolling to the bottom. We talk about this all the time with our athletes in-house in Vegas. And I talk about this in general. You'll hear me screaming it when there's burpee workouts during the week. And I think that's going to make a big difference. So if you don't have to do that, I would strongly suggest it. I also think it's going to take a little bit more out of you for the thrusters if you do that, because essentially you're doing a slow negative on every single burpee. It's going to affect your pressing. So if you can just drop into it, that's the way to go for sure on the burpee section.
Mm-hmm.
Dakota was wearing gloves. Oh yeah,
just one.
Go.
Yeah,
because he thought he was going to outsmart the workout.
It was a situation where we were talking about chalking, and I'm habitually taking chalk breaks or water breaks, and so it was something that I was just going to test out to see if I have like a pair of Reebok CrossFit gloves. And at first, when I jumped up on the pull-up bar the few times, it felt cool, and then honestly, most of the way through the workout, I didn't feel like I needed them. I feel like I would have been fine without them. If you really need something on your hand, I would recommend like going for those 2 or 3 finger grips that have the holes that you can just leave on, instead of like the flappy one that, you have to worry about every single time. But honestly, I would do it again. I would go no chalk, no grips, no gloves, no anything. Maybe like a little bit of tape. I see it. They have a couple pieces of tape on their thumb, but no recommendations to go out and get some gloves and try it.
Yeah, Stroka, let's keep this rolling through the thrusters so we can comment on the thrusters too. Let's keep it rolling. I'd love to be able to comment on some of these. We pull it back a little bit. Yeah, cool. Thanks. Go ahead, Keith.
I was just going to say, I think sweatbands are the play, and nothing else is really necessary. Sweatbands just to make sure that as you're going through the workout, you don't sweat onto your hands. And if you don't, then you shouldn't have any issues with it. You're doing pull-ups as singles that are hardly pull-ups because you're able to jump the whole way up.
So we're seeing here, we saw Roman just hit 135. Pat takes a little bit more time. He's warming up his legs, doing some squats in the back. And he's going to step up to 230. I would, I want to watch it again. So I'm happy we have it here, but I'm very curious to get both your guys' opinions on whether or not you would consider Pat's next two thrusters as reps or no reps.
Yeah. And I think when thinking about that, like watching that first one, clean, he had a good squat, came up with good speed, finished it off with the press. And then like when you watch the next one, especially when you watch that knee kind of buckle underneath, it's just the biggest thing is just they don't look the same. And you'll see it here in a second.
We talk about with thrusters all the time the idea of standing up as hard as you can. It's really going to be imperative for you to create, as obviously you want to explode out of the bottom, but there's that point, where you're just about at extension that you're going to want to stand and squeeze your glutes as hard as you can. And you're going to want to drive and stand up as hard as you can right at the end, on almost the apex of the thruster, which is then going to allow the legs to be the primary mover. Yeah, that was a no rep. I'm shocked that they actually called that.
Yeah, Hiller slowed it all down, and we were able to see it in slow motion. It's a tough one to call real time. It certainly looks off, but when you look at it really slow, it does look like he rebends underneath.
Well, I don't think that one was that hard to call. I think the next one is the hard one to call. The 270. I think the 255 was he didn't mean to do it, but it was pretty egregious, honestly. The 270, this is a tougher one to call, but I think that 255 was pretty obvious. I don't know whether the judge wasn't watching the knees. Maybe she was just watching the extension at the top and just lost just didn't get the whole view of it. But to me, that was a pretty easy call. The 255. I don't know that the 270 is as easy. Hiller slowed it down, and it's very, very close, the 270. I thought the 255 was pretty clear. Roman, meanwhile, really, really solid. The only thing that Roman does is he walks a little bit on the 295, but at no time does he look like he's rebending.
Let's see what we got.
Oh,
That
that's
was his miss.
270.
Yeah. He missed this and he came back and hit it.
Got it.
And then he actually, I think he took a rip at 275.
275 and missed
So they both had time for 5 attempts. To me, I just think that it just wasn't quite necessary. If you watch Roman's 225 and his 275, they both look really easy. I think that he probably could have very well gone right to 225 to start. Now, I don't know that that would have meant that he hit anything heavier than this 295 here. But what I do know is that he would have had an additional minute to rest before he did it. And so I think that potentially, instead of having, what looks like 45 seconds here for him to rest and then take the rip at it, he might have been able to treat it like a true strength lift, take 2 minutes, and he might have hit that weight.
That's a tough call.
Kind of does this little, hip just drop to one side. It doesn't look like he does a full rebend underneath it with his knees, but definitely you could see something like in his, midline or in his hip start to give out
the
a
270 was a tough call. That there's no doubt that 270 was tough. But I think that the 255 should have absolutely been a no rep. And then they both missed these here. I mean, obviously, I think when we're talking about, the rest of the world, right? Like more of the everyday CrossFit or people that are, shooting for, quarterfinals level. Some of the big keys here, we're not talking about elite fitness, is really starting out of the gate at a very comfortable pace, being able to sustain that. And then obviously, like you said, Keith, I think that people are going to be able to hit very close to their 1 rep max thruster. But again, I think it's also allowing yourself, not rushing right afterwards, give yourself the opportunity to get a little bit of rest. I don't think Pat hit a lift until about 1:30. So, even at 1:30, if you think about it that way, you'll definitely still get 4 lifts. I mean, you get 1:30, 2:30, 3:30, and then you can go at the last one at 4:55. You just have to pull it off the ground prior to 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be completed at 5 minutes. So there's no reason you shouldn't be able to get, minimum 4 lifts here. Don't rush at a heavy weight on that first thruster. Make sure to give yourself a little bit of time, let your heart rate come back down. If you saw Pat hit a couple squats, or, you saw Roman hit a, like you said, kind of a throwaway or just like a groove weight. If you decide to do that, Kiefer said he feels like he probably could have gone a little bit heavier. Dakota made a 70-pound jump. And I feel like, that's not going to be too crazy for people. But again, I mean, if you can start a little bit heavier, and it's not going to tax you, then I think that's fine. I just think you want to make sure that you feel confident on that first lift. You don't want to pick a weight that you're going to do that all of a sudden you get in your head like, holy shit, that one felt really, really heavy right off the jump. And then it's going to get in your head for the rest of the 3.5 minutes. So pick a weight that you're going to smash, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, like you said, Kiefer, 95, 135.
Now, when we watched them do all of their thrusters, they did them all as clusters. I know that's what you did for all your lifts, right, Kiefer?
Mm-hmm.
And then I went for the power clean plus thruster. Any thoughts on, the difference between those, or just comfort level?
I think, I mean, for me, it's just comfort level. Like, I'm as comfortable in a squat clean as I am a power clean, but I also felt like for me to power clean it, just would have been like an extra rep worth of effort feeling. So if you're comfortable enough getting into a good front rack position in that squat clean, then I think that that's perfectly fine. I know for you, like, squat clean and front rack are not like your favorite position. So it might make more sense in that case to power clean, get into a really good, strong position, and then you can go into a front squat front squat, like a thruster from that point.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big difference. I think you'll see most people, most comfortable, quarterfinals and above athletes will just do it as a squat clean into it. I don't think there's a huge reason not to. But I don't think there's anything wrong with your way. I think in the warm up, I played around with both and I just didn't notice any benefit for myself in it. And so I chose not to.
Why don't you guys talk a little bit about how you warmed up? for the workout, thruster wise, and the shuttle run, burpee pull up, kind of like talk a little bit about warm ups, a little bit about primers that people can do, and talk about, what you guys did.
Yeah. Well, when we were watching this, I just was sitting on the bike. I mean, I logged like 15, 20 minutes, just like at a nice zone 2 to get a little sweat going. Definitely something that I feel like personally I need to be doing more of, because I'll jump into workouts pretty, I guess, too fresh. And that first round or that first couple minutes is too much of a heart rate spike. And so that was kind of nice to just start off by getting a little bit of a sweat. And then we just started, doing some mobilizing, doing some like some back and forths. Like I have some turf drills where it's high knees and butt kickers and stretching out, the calves, stretching out the hamstring, stretching out the hips, and kind of just did a little general warm up for about 15, 20 minutes first. Then kind of started pulling out the barbell and going a little bit back and forth between like some of the technique practice of the burpee pull up, trying to use that line as my friend. Like you're supposed to have that tape line right underneath the bar to mark the shuttle run. And, playing around with where my hands would be jumping down and jumping up versus like he was Kiefer was saying, trying to spot the bar on the way up versus finding your footing, looking up and then jump. So I kind of was messing around with a little bit of the technique. And then really we just kind of built to a 1 rep max right before we started, which honestly, it felt good. It was a good call.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say order of operations to me is like get into the gym, do your very general warm up that you might do on any training day. Like if you like to do 5 minutes of bike and some mobility, do that stuff. Awesome. Then I would warm up the thruster entirely first. So grab the empty barbell, get warmed up, get your front rack really, really warmed up, more so than you would for a clean, because in the thruster, you need to be able to keep a more full grip. The more full grip you can have, the better you're going to be able to transition through the middle, because you're thinking of it like how you would push press. Like if you're standing tall, you've got a full grip, you want to be able to drive continuously. So really warm up your front rack, warm up your legs, build up to a weight. I think that building up at least to an opener is something that everybody can and should have no issues doing, because it's just not that taxing of a lift. And I think, like I said earlier, like if you don't know what your 1 rep max is, I think you can push that envelope a little bit more and get closer to that feeling, because it's just a lift that's going to be separated. Like you could see hundreds of spots separated by 10 pounds. And so I think having a better understanding of what your max is going to be really helpful so that you can shoot closer to that number, especially knowing that it just wasn't that taxing to go from, wasn't that specifically taxing to go from part A of the workout to part B. And then once we built to that weight, we stripped it down to what we felt like our starting weight was, and we just warmed up the second part there. And so like Dakota had already done some general dynamic warm-up stuff. I think it's great. As far as primers go, this is the best possible time to like rehearse your footwork and everything for that burpee pull-up. And so the way that I did it was I did a couple rounds of 5 burpee pull-ups, 3 shuttle runs, 5 burpee pull-ups again, and then I would rest a little bit. And what I was trying to take note of is like, where is my heart rate getting to as I do this? Is this pace feeling a little bit too hot? Is it a little bit too slow? Again, just like we talked about last week with like, how fast should you row on the first workout and everything else? Like we just saw the best athletes in the world do it, and they weren't doing it any faster than 20 seconds, any faster really than, 4.5 or 5 seconds of burpee. So you probably shouldn't be doing that either. You're probably thinking they were going to be a little bit slower on it. And so when I warm up, I tend to go try, like, it's kind of like the Goldilocks thing. Like I'll try a little bit too fast. I'll try a little bit too slow. I'll figure out like where my happy medium is. And so for me, like a little too fast is the pace that they stayed at. I knew I'd be a little bit slower. And then the shuttle runs are just about managing your heart rate. So I just practice footwork, moving back and forth. You should be feeling like you're getting your heart rate up to that, zone 3-ish range, like, 155, 170 heart rate range that you feel like you could sustain. You should be getting there once or twice, let it come back down fully. And then I think when you start the workout, you'll be much more comfortable there, as opposed to going from being pretty stagnant at like, you're walking around heart rate to right into a workout. And it's really easy to come out too hot. It's really easy to come out too hot in an ascending ladder of anything. And I think because these workouts there's no loading in it, it's even easier.
Couple things I just remembered. So you're allowed to have people, they specifically said you're allowed to have people change your weights. So make sure that you have people in there to be able to help you change your weights. Make sure that you have the plates that you want to use set up next to your barbell before the workout starts, unlike Kiefer, and you're yelling at people to run and get 5s and 2.5s in the middle of the 5 minutes and creating a lot more stress for yourself. So don't do that. Make sure you have everything that you want around prior to. What I did like that Kiefer did, and I think it's something that you can utilize if you have the access to fractionals in the gym, throwing up a pair of 1s on either side to just bump it, say from, if you're going to hit 225, well, you might as well hit 227. That's going to bump you a little bit up on the leaderboard. So I don't think there's anything wrong with setting those. And I would put them just like Kiefer did on the inside of the bar, and then they're there. And when you're doing it, you're not even thinking about it like that. You're thinking about it as like you did at 225, 240, 250. And then you're like, oh, wow, I put those extra fractionals on and now I get an extra couple of pounds, which is great. So I would suggest that. And those are things that you can do, obviously, that will help to eliminate some stress, during that part of the workout. Are there any things that you guys have as far as tips, as far as setup, or as far as, things that you can remember that you would say to yourself, I did this well, or I would go back and change? Obviously, I know, Kiefer, you'd put the plates there next time. But anything else?
My last thing, or Dakota, you go first. You say what yours is.
Yeah. I mean, having not just someone there to help the loading, but on top of your reps as well. There was just a slight miscount calculation on my first round, because I was just trying to do the honor system and count my own reps. But I mean, the open A is, we have standards, we have, the floor plan, we have the rep schemes that are like very specific, and it's supposed to be a qualifying workout. So 2 seconds to screw it up. And then I had someone come over and, help me keep track. We know that the whole shuttle run debacle of last year was ridiculous. But I mean, when you're doing those 20 lengths or 10 laps and, you start counting one time off, all of a sudden you're screwed up. And having someone there, even if you don't have someone there, have a whiteboard, have something that's going to help you keep track, where it's not going to be like a huge time distraction, stepping over and making a mark or something like that. But there's a lot of reps and a lot of constant repetition, and it's easy to get lost in the shuffle or lost in the shuttle. You know what I mean?
And then I would just say, mentality wise, I think that a big chunk of people are going to find themselves right around the set of 30 burpee pull-ups at the end of the workout. And I think it's super common for us to know, like, you get to your last 30 seconds, you get to your last minute, and everybody's got like that little bit of extra gas in the tank. Hopefully you're in that position when you have something. To me, I got back to it. I don't know. I had under a minute to get back when I was at the burpee pull-ups at the end. What I wished for myself was that I had pushed the shuttles before a little bit harder, because the shuttles before that set, I treated them like the rounds previous, where I was trying to maintain my heart rate, keep my heart rate down so I could go into that and be able to get through all the work. But I think that, rather than treating like the last round as the last round, if I had thought of the second to last round as my championship round and I pushed those shuttles more, then I could have easily had 20 seconds left. And in 20 seconds, when your back's against the wall at the end, you can move a little bit faster. And that could have been another 5 reps for me. And so I think that's, this could be different for everybody. If you're going to be a lot of people that are listening are probably going to be ahead of where I was, and they'll already be in the burpee pull-ups. But like, don't be afraid to hit the gas pedal with, 2 minutes, 90 seconds left, because I think there's a lot of just willpower that goes into the end of a workout like this, because it's not limited by your skill level. And so you really just have to be able to like put the hammer down, knowing that 1 rep, 2 rep, 3 reps moves you up the leaderboard a ton.
I fell victim to the exact same thing. I was in that last set of runs. I looked at the clock. I had like a little bit over 2 minutes. I said, okay, I can, get through these and maybe have a minute to hammer some burpees. And so I was just kind of, sticking with that, more casual pace back and forth. And then I started going and I had like 55 seconds and I was ripping them, and I could have done it at that, championship pace for another minute if I needed to. So if I would have, cranked the burpee or the shuttle time on that last one, same thing. I mean, 10 reps is a huge difference when everybody's clustered in that last set of burpees.
For sure.
So before we sign off, what do we Well, give me some predictions on what you guys think the best scores in the world will be. We did that last week and we were right. We got a couple people over 300 reps. What do you guys think will be the best scores in the world?
What was Roman's score? Was it 168? So he's at 168 and he's a round of 35 burpee pull-ups. At the pace that they're at,
pull-ups.
At the pace that they're at, 5 burpee pull-ups takes 20 seconds. So that's going to be that's like 2.5 minutes. I don't think anybody's getting through that piece because they're not going to be 2.5 minutes ahead of Roman's pace. So I think that you're going to get a huge cluster fairly close to that. I think that 175 will be around the mark. I think that getting close to 180 is going to be really fucking impressive. I would not be surprised if there's a couple of athletes that get towards that, but I just think like the burpee pull-ups are just such a time suck that the difference in 10 reps is 40 seconds.
I think we're going to see somebody get 180.
I think that'll probably be.
Maybe that's just ridiculous, but I just have a feeling we're going to see somebody get 180.
I mean, that's under a minute of work, probably, of difference from where Roman's at. It's not unrealistic. They were not running hard. I think if somebody has a good running track soccer background, they've got a phenomenal engine. I think we could see it. Like it's the type of workout that I think that Ricky could do something like that because he's just such a good runner. His threshold's so high. I think
also a great upper body puller and you know good at. So we see one of our athletes,
profile of athlete,
Big Braun, 159 and 276, very solid scores.
And then I think for the thruster, God, I just saw a video the other day of Tola push pressing 315 and it looked like nothing. And so to me, like, God, I don't know what the biggest push presses out there for guys are, but I think that we're going to see something. We got to see something 335 or so.
CrossFit Thor, probably
345, maybe.
I would think CrossFit Thor is probably going to be up around 350.
Yeah. I mean, Tim Paulson's got to have a great push press as well. I know he's strong overhead. The boys at Invictus will do really well.
Yeah.
They did 5 shuttles or did technically 6 shuttles?
Dakota, your internet sucks.
Oh.
I don't know what's going on. You're breaking up. I'm not sure what he asked. Did you know what he asked, Kiefer?
Nope.
No.
Am I a little more?
Yeah, you're Charlie Brown's teacher.
No. You're dead to us now.
Yeah, you're done. On the female side, what are we thinking?
225, 240, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, I was thinking. I think we're going to see a 230 to 240 on the women's side.
Yep.
I think that's doable.
And I think that you're going to see a vast majority of men stockpiled like 265 to 280 and a vast majority of women stockpiled in like the 180 to 190 range.
I think it's going to be lower. I think you're going to see a massive stockpile of 165 to 185 for women. I think it's going to be a massive. I think you're going to have a ton between, especially of like, high level quarters, semi-final, like mid-level semis that are going to be stockpiled between 165 and 185.
And it's just lends back to my thing of like, if you don't have one, get a really good idea of what your thruster is, because I think that there's going to be a lot of people with unfortunate execution errors just because they made too big of a jump or because they ran out of time. And I think that it's going to be enough that people will redo because that's going to make such a drastic difference. Like the difference between 10 or 15 pounds is going to be huge on the leaderboard. So really try to get a good idea, plan yourself, put yourself in a position to be able to get close to that number.
Dakota, I think you're back among the living. You want to chime in?
We're back in?
Yeah, you're in.
Sweet. I was asking about the rounds shuttle run because I was trying to calculate some reps. Like if they took 5 seconds off per shuttle run, that would give them that extra 30 seconds to hammer out those burpees. So you can see, 10 to 15 extra reps there at the end on top of the 168.
Yeah, I mean, you can just see that in their drop off in the shuttle run, starting around a minute, getting to like a minute 20. If there's somebody out there that can, if there are people out there that can average in like the minute and 8 second range across the whole board, and that's going to make a big difference. And I think you're just going to see this be a really impressive race of the endurance athletes in the first part.
Yeah, I feel like somebody like James Sprague is just going to smash that first part.
I don't, Jared, you're late. You're going to have to rewind and you'll hear us talk about what percent they can give on that, what they can expect on the thruster. No, but for real, I, what we said before is I think we were surprised by how little the workout affected our ability to thruster. Heart rate was really high. It took a minute or two to get that back. But when we went to do the thruster, you were surprised by how fresh your legs and the actual like thruster ability felt. And so we both took kind of throwaway weights to start. And I think that we both regretted it because it lost us about a minute of time that we could have used. So looking at the difference in strategies, obviously Roman finished higher, but he's just stronger at the movement anyway. But looking at the strategies where Roman started at 135 and then went to 225, Pat started at 230 and just jumped up from there. I think that you can err more on the side of starting at like that 70 to 75% weight and you're going to be fine. It might feel a little heavy because your heart rate's high, but I think that if it saves you a minute, then that's a minute of time you could use to take closer jumps to your heaviest weight and not have that opportunity to like maybe miss a load and get stuck with a weight you're not happy with. You're welcome, Jared.
I agree.
Yep.
After
agreed.
watching
And then, that last attempt, definitely squeeze out every second you can before you need to get that bar off the ground. There's no need to rush it. I mean, you are probably going to be rushing your last attempt to squeeze in one more, but lift off at, 59 seconds, 58 seconds.
Okay. We're actually not answering this question from Jared. He came on right after we answered it already.
What one was it?
What's the most weight we'll see?
I'm saying 330 with the kilo bar. With the kilos, 150. Yeah.
No. I think it's gonna be more than that. I think you're gonna see closer to 340, 350.
Yeah, I think CrossFit Thor could hit somewhere around 350. Anthony Davis, right?
Luis Oscar Moya, Tola, them boys at Invictus are big and strong. I think there's a lot of guys that are going to put up something impressive.
I think you're to see 340 plus, honestly.
Yeah.
And on the women's side, I think 230 plus. I think we'll see a couple women that might be able to hit 230 plus.
Hopefully one of them's in our gym.
Yeah, I think one of them could be on our gym. So I don't. It should be fun, man. I'm curious to see this. I mean, I like the test. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the same time domain as last week, but as you pointed out earlier, like very different tests.
Stimulus is so different. Yeah.
Yes.
Which I think is fun.
Yeah.
This is a good, true kind of threshold endurance test. Like, can you hurt? Can you move? Do you understand your fitness and your heart rate?
Predictions for next week.
Oh yeah, I guess we left out Guy and those strong boys. That's a massive oversight on our part. We'd look stupid if we didn't mention Guy as one of those guys.
Yeah,
well, they mentioned.
I still think the stronger.
Boz mentioned the flip-flop.
I don't think we know how strong he is.
So strong.
Oh, dang it! Was I getting cut out again?
No, you're good.
You're
good. Okay,
you're good. We're just talking over you, bro.
No worries. I mean, he mentioned the flip-flop. The normal ideal of mid-weight high thrusters. And that they were going to change it. So I don't think we're going to see the traditional Fran combo. I think we could still see, just the bars or a pull-up progression in there.
I don't think so.
No,
I think for 2 reasons. I think that's wrong for a couple of reasons. One, because they already did toe to bar, ring muscle ups, and burpee pull up. So all we've done is like pulling, hanging type stuff. 2, because the 2 women that they just announced are like the best in the world on their hands. And so I think we're seeing wall walks or handstand walks next week.
We're definitely going to see wall walks or handstand walks next week.
What about a modified 2-round Diane, kind of like they did?
I think it'd be really cool.
I was going to say, I think we're going to see either wall walks or handstand walks and deadlifts next week.
I was just going to say kettlebell deadlifts, wall walks, high rep on the deadlifts with it.
Could be.
Everybody's talking about the kettlebells. This could be it.
It could be. I mean, that they did say you need it. It's on the equipment list.
Yep.
Right. So we could see them. Cool. Any parting shots or last points, boys?
Nope. I will be practicing my wall walks and handstand walks for the next week, so I can try to not go 0 for 4 against Dakota. There's nothing left for me.
Oh man, you got a deadlift? You got a big deadlift? You'll be all right.
We're not getting a heavy deadlift.
No, I don't think so. I think it's gonna be a lot.
The world is not that good to me, and I also thought that shuttle runs and burpees were the workout I could beat him at. So
I would have thought so too. Yeah, I would have thought so.
Well, the pull up, it's got to be the pull up.
Yeah.
That extra range of motion. You're just so tall.
Mm-hmm. Jared, you want
partying.
to stay on and chat for a while, or
Yeah. Apparently Jared just joined us like what, about 5 minutes ago.
somebody send him the link. Just let
Send
him
him the
in.
link. All right, boys. Thanks again.
Until next time.
Until next time. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll get our crew will be getting after this, and but I'm sure before then we'll have some scores from our Aussies and Kiwis and stuff. I haven't even checked. I got to check the IG and see if who wants to chat prior to. But we should have some good scores for people to know once we get to the gym. So
Go.
bye, everyone.
Until next time. This is In the Doghouse.